Sisters and brothers, ladies and gentlemen, friends, neighbors, comrades, all citizens of the world, wherever you're going, wherever you've been, and wherever you're at, we welcome you to the Live from the Heartland show here on YouTube. New episodes air every Friday at 9 a.m. Central Time with individual interviews posted throughout the following week. I'm your host, Michael James, encouraging you to take the chain from the brain, to get back in the people's game, because it's time to move from the lower level to the higher, from the shallower to the deeper, from the one-sided to the many, and from the abstract to the concrete. So without further ado, let's get it on. Welcome all you citizens of the world. Once again, it's time for another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. I'm Michael James. I'm here in Chicago up in the 49th Ward, and this show is being recorded on April 29th for the week of May 4th, 2024. We've got three guests today. We're going to have the photographer, former leader of the Chicago Jazz Institute, Lauren Deutsch, and we're going to have the family Lightwriters people, the neon people, Jacob Fishman, and I think his daughter, Zoelle Nagib. I want to start off with talking a little bit about trees from Spark of Genius, which is a great little email I get each week. It's called Good News for Humankind. They bring the world's latest milestones for climate justice, peace, health, and more. And they report that the Democratic Republic of the Congo has planted more than 800 million trees since 2019. 10% of the world's tropical forests are found in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, but they have been losing, I think, 1.2 million acres of forest every year. To help this, the Congolese government program aspired to plant 1 billion trees between 2019 and 2023, aiming to strengthen climate resilience, alleviate poverty, and protect biodiversity. And they have achieved 90% of their goal. Good thing. Another good thing, tree-related, is honoring Edgewater's history trees. And Edgewater is the neighborhood just south of Rogers Park. It's in the 48th Ward. And I found this, the Edgewater Historical Society's latest initiative, honoring Edgewater's heritage trees. This initiative is multifaceted, features an exhibit at their museum, a series of tree-related lecture programs, and most importantly, a survey of all Edgewater's heritage trees or trees more than 50 years old. This initiative came out of the Edgewater Glen Association Block Club, and they have checked out all the trees on the parkways and in their neighborhoods. It is spearheaded by our friend and local resident, Andrea Rayla, and it's a good thing. You can check things out at edgewaterhistory.org, EHS/category/topic/news. Just to say it again, you can go to www.edgewaterhistory.org, and you'll find plenty of information. Not so good things. Certainly the wars going on, not only in Ukraine, but also in Gaza and in Africa. A lot of protests are taking place. That is a good thing. Some of the ways the demonstrations have been dealt with by the authorities is not such a good thing. And on a lighter note, I want to talk about an ad I keep seeing on TV. I watch a lot of sports, and there are ads for the Buffalo Wild Wings. And they have this faux buffalo just wreaking havoc on people in the bar, employees at the restaurant or the bar. And it's just stupid. And I don't know how they think they're going to get more business from portraying the wonderful bison or buffalo in such a negative manner. We, are big fans of buffalo at the old Heartland Cafe. We served a lot of buffalo burgers. And we do like people like Dan and Jill O'Brien, who are working with Wild Idea Buffalo to bring back our prairies by raising more and more buffalo to trample the earth, bring back the grasses, bring back the insects, the small animals, etc. So long live the buffalo. And if you're ever in a Buffalo Wild Wings, tell them that the ad is really stupid. On the labor front, let's just say we've seen some victories with the United Auto Workers Now going into the South, there was another victory besides the Chattanooga victory with, I think, Daimler Bus Manufacturing in North Carolina. And there's a vote coming up in, I think, in Mississippi. And, in the old days, there used to be more unions in the South, particularly in Birmingham. I have my Birmingham shirt on. And we're looking forward to more advances by the United Auto Workers and other unions, not only in the South, but all around the country. Okay, on the judicial decision front, as we go to record for on air and stream, etc., we have learned that West Virginia and North Carolina's transgender care coverage policies discriminate, a judge has ruled. I think this report just came up on my phone from AP. Their refusal to cover certain health care for transgender folks with government sponsored insurance is discriminatory, ruled a federal appeals court. Now, that's probably going to go on now to the Supreme Court. And what they will do, who knows? The Supreme Court has been pretty disappointing for some time now, although there are some hopes we still have. So let's hope that we see more and more improvement from our Supreme Court. Moving right along, our brief sports report today is the White Sox, who had lost all but 3 games up until this weekend, swept the Tampa Bay Rays with 3 victories. And I'm going to go to a game sometime this week, and I hope we'll win there. Take note of this. The Free Street Theater has a new production called Mothering the Movement. And performances begin on Friday. And after some people get to watch this on YouTube or listen to it on Lumpen Radio, on Friday night there is a performance, and then on Saturday afternoon from 2 to 3. And Free Street has always been really great. They do free theater in the parks. It has a lot of politics involved. And this is their youth ensemble with a new play. And I'm looking forward to checking it out. And just in case you forgot, last week we had Susan Klonsky talking about the passing of Reverend Walter Slim Coleman, a longtime activist in Chicago. We should all be really grateful to him and learn more about him. And there will be a citywide memorial taking place at Operation Push on May 30th. That's a Thursday night from 6 to 8 at 930 East 50th Street. So enough of that. We'll have a little music from our engineer, Hal James, and then we'll be back with our first guest, the one and only Lauren Deutsch. Welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of May 4th in the year 2024. I'm still Michael James. I'm still up here in the 49th Ward. And we've got a guest now who I've been trying to get on the show for a while. I first met her when I was teaching at Columbia College. I taught a class called Organizing for Social Change. And I have to say, one of my best students ever was the one and only Lauren Deutsch. And Lauren is our guest today. Hello, Lauren.
Hi, Michael. It cracks me up when you said I was your best student ever.
Yeah, well, you certainly were one of the best, that's for sure. And you've gone on to do some really great work. Just so at the top of this discussion or interview, we'll let people know that you, for years, ran the Chicago Jazz Institute, and you are a photographer of some renown, and you've been taking pictures of musicians and other things for a long, long time. And one of the reasons I think you got back to me to say, yeah, let's do it, was you have an event coming up. How about telling us a little bit about it?
Yes, that is true. I have um, created an immersive exhibition of my music photography that is it's designed to create an environment where you could feel like you're actually stepping inside of the music. And this is a first for me. It's involved having to learn a lot of technical things that weren't really in my wheelhouse before, but I have taken to them rather quickly, and I'm enjoying this new evolution of the work that I've been engaged in doing for the last 45 years.
How about before we get more into the various pictures and the event itself, talking a little bit about what you've been doing for the last 45 years? Because I think a lot of that time you were with the Chicago Jazz Institute. And I'm a longtime jazz fan, although I kind of know more about the old days on Blue Note than more current stuff. But you're right in the thick of it. Talk about it a little bit, Lauren.
Well, actually, what I was thinking of talking about to begin with is, you know, how when you're in your 20s, you really have no idea what's going to happen, but you just plow forward towards whatever goal or dream that you have. And I always knew I wanted to be an artist. That was for sure. Um, but I didn't really have any examples or models of how to get there. So one of the things I was thinking about, Michael, was after the organizing for social change class, you invited me to join Rising Up Angry. I think I was all of 19 years old at the time. So I was the baby and just really learning everything. But one of the things remember getting involved in there was the cooperative energy supply production, which was a series of concerts that we put on in various places, hotels downtown.
Midland.
Anyway, I had no idea then that learning how to produce concerts was going to be something that would come in handy later in my life. Um, and as it turned out, it did. Um, but the other thing I wanted to talk about was it's sort of the thing that really became my North Star in terms of the work that I ended up pursuing happened around the same time back in the mid 70s. I joined the Chicago Women's Liberation Union, which at that time had lots of different sort of sub chapters. And I was part of one called the Women's Prison Project. And as part of that project, we went down to Dwight State Prison to work with the residents there. And our subversive agenda was that we were going to go there several times under the guise of teaching art and poetry, I think. And then we were going to sneak in video cameras and interview the women and create, some kind of video uprising thing. So we went, and it was really interesting. Like the first time we went there, there were maybe 6 people in the class. The next time there were 15. The next time there were 30, because the women had no sort of other opportunity to hang together, to be together, to communicate and converse. But we, I think we were teaching them how to do macrame plant holders.
With a little politics around the edges.
Well, we would, sit and talk. But what I discovered was that even the act of doing something as simple as making a little bit of macrame really enlivened these women in ways in which it was clear that when you're living in an environment where your identity and your dignity are being stripped away every day in big ways and small ways, that having the opportunity to create something that you made with your hands and or your head or your heart was really empowering. And that really hugely impacted me and the way I thought about the importance of making art and experiencing art really became my North Star. And it jived really well when I began to be involved with the Jazz Institute, where I served on the board from the early 80s to the mid 90s, after which I became executive director. But one of the primary principles of the Jazz Institute was to make the music as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. So everything we did was free. And so this idea of giving access to everyone for listening to art, for creating art, all of the education programs we did were also free. That all became, sort of really aligned with what I had, sort of seen for myself as what my passion and where my mission should be.
Well, Lauren, when you were with the Jazz Institute, um, Talk about some of the events that you helped to put on and some of the accomplishments that you think helped to make Chicago a better place. We're already in the forefront of culture, and you've helped keep us there. Fill us in a little bit.
Well, when I started in the mid '90s, we weren't doing very much. We were programming the Jazz Festival, which the Jazz Institute um, lobbied the city to create. So we were really the instigators for that festival to
Was
happen.
that in the days of Lois Weisberg as head of cultural affairs?
No, actually, it was before cultural affairs existed, and
Oh,
Heather
okay.
Blandick was the person who actually gave the okay for it. And
Great.
Heather is the person who eventually helped launch the Department of Cultural Affairs. We had not had any municipal agency for the arts until the late '70s, early '80s. Anyway, we weren't doing very much. We did the festival, we did the jazz fair, and I came in with no experience at all as an arts administrator. And it was not even something that I knew that I had the skill set to do. But it turned out that because I really, after serving on the board for 14 years, um, I had really embraced the mission of the organization. And in a strange way, not a strange way, in an interesting way, um, being on that board was my training for my job because the Jazz Institute didn't have a staff yet. So we did everything and we did it by committee, and everything was done by consensus. And that's also kind of a thing that I learned in my sort of growing up in the organizing world was, how to get things done, and really making consensus an important aspect of how you made decisions became and remained important to me in my service at the Jazz Institute of Chicago. Um, so I jumped in. I learned a lot. I realized I had skills and connections that were useful, which included Helen Doria, who worked at the Heartland Cafe. And when I um, stepped up to the executive director job, she was head of the um, well, I don't know what the department was at the Chicago Park District, but it was the one that had to do with putting on events. And so
Yeah.
I knocked on her door and I said, I think it'd be really cool to do a series of jazz concerts in neighborhoods all over the city. Could we partner with the Park District to do that? And Helen said she would see if she could find some money to do that. And she came up with $9,000. And that was how we launched this Jazz City series, which started in 1998 and continues to put on very high level concerts in neighborhoods all over the city. And that program was actually the first one in the city to really focus on providing that kind of experience to folks who lived in neighborhoods and couldn't necessarily afford to buy tickets to come to Symphony Center or go to concerts downtown. We developed a really wonderful community that followed the program from one end of the city to the other, that brought people from Naperville in the northwest suburbs to Englewood, where we really broke down a lot of geographic and racial barriers through this music, which in and of itself seems to have an ability to draw people together. And because it's a very powerful and spiritual sort of music and experience. So Jazz City um, really was one of the first, and to me, one of the most important things that I did at the Jazz Institute. Um, and to start it, I thought it was important to meet with all of the music directors from the different Park District um, field houses, that they should have input. And that also became really my strategy for everything that I did. It was, you know, I didn't know anything. I started an education program by sitting down with the high school teachers and asking them what they needed and what could we do. And out of that came a really robust education program that included jam sessions. Started out at Hot House, now they're at the Jazz Showcase for high school kids. At that time, there was no place for high school kids to jam together, and in this way, they were also able to meet other kids from all over the city and eventually the suburbs too, And so they also learned about building community through these jam sessions. We addressed other needs that the teachers expressed as well. And I formed a teachers advisory council. And that in and of itself, because music teachers in Chicago public schools are really taken for granted, are really disrespected. They don't get any of the privileges that the math and science teachers get. Are they learn that their class, their music class, is considered a frill or a reward for students and not something that's actually essential. So, um, so gathering these teachers and empowering them to make decisions about what our organization could do for them was another thing that I'm really proud of having done. And um, eventually, I kind of stumbled into partnering with this organization in Poznan, Poland, who I ended up developing and co-producing a jazz festival there called Made in Chicago for 12 years. And was told at the end of that time by some of the young musicians in Poznan that the festival had helped to build a community for young jazz musicians there where there had not previously been any kind of way that they felt that they could all come together. So I
Where was that? Where is that?
Poznan, Poland is
Oh, it's in Poland.
yeah, it's kind of in the north, the center north. It's 2 hours, 2.5 hours from Berlin, and it's close to the coast. Um, yeah, so for 12 years, I took about 100 musicians to Poland, and for many of them, it opened the doors to Europe. Like a lot of them had never been there before, and they were able to meet other producers and so that's another thing that I did that I felt.
Well, you know that I'm learning a lot, and I wish I had followed it more closely along the way. But you did retire, and you are now about to put on this exhibit. So tell us a little bit about what's going on with your photography. Which I've seen your pictures over the years. You took a couple of great pictures of me that I still love. One with my son Jesse up on my shoulders, another with me with the crutch when I had a broken foot at Columbia College.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what I think is would be great for people to hear about is a little bit about the photos that you have going into this exhibit and where it's going to be held.
Okay, so this is it's an immersive exhibition, and I want to show a few of these pictures because then it'll be easier to talk about them if you could see them.
Aha.
So this is a picture of the AACM's Great Black Music Ensemble, and it's a good example of the kind of work that I'm doing now. And what I have discovered is a way that I think really is able to communicate the power and the energy and the spirit of the music. It's kind of a secret sauce, although the methodology is really simple. I shoot at a slow shutter speed, and I move the camera and my body to the music, and so it feels really like a collaborative experience that I'm actually collaborating with the musicians. So you could see there's a lot of movement in these photographs, and I felt that that was I felt that if I could actually make them move using some kind of software, that that would begin to take these photographs to the next level. And so that's very much what this exhibition is about.
I'm liking the blur because it gives legitimacy to my photos. You know, most of my photos are blurry, and once in a while I get a good one, but I do like the blur. You
Well,
know, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah, no, because that it gives you a different sort of a sense of um, the liveliness of a photograph. The digital photography now has sort of created this sense that you have to see every single pore on somebody's face in order for a photograph to like be acceptable. But I come from the same sort of era as you in photography anyway. So The event will be on May 9th and May 10th. It's an exhibition. The hours are from 5 o'clock to 8:30 p.m. on each of those days, Thursday, May 9th and Friday, May 10th. It's at Asian Improv Arts Midwest in their new building at 4875 North Elston Avenue in Chicago. It's 60630. The exhibition runs for about an hour, so it'll be on a loop. So whenever you come between the hours of 5 p.m. and 8:30 p.m., you'd be able to see the whole thing within an hour.
Well, for you people who didn't get to see these photos, I would say you could go to youtube.com/heartlandmedia/videos and see Lauren's work. But you could probably, Lauren, tell us your website. And then I wanted to ask one last question. Is that new venue where you're going to have this at the Asian Improv Arts, is that Tatsu Aoki? Is that the guy who started
Yes.
it?
Yeah, it certainly is. And Tatsu and Edward Wilkerson will be playing live music to improvising to the images that are on the screen.
Oh, that'll be the music we should play for this segment. You want to give us a little bit of a kind of advice or cheer on to photographers and young photographers about what to do with their fancier and fancier cameras, or their simple old, you know, box cameras or whatever they're
I
using?
don't know. I'm really an old school girl. It took me forever to actually cross the digital divide. And I think that the best advice I have, because it is antithetical to the way that most people use digital cameras, is don't take a billion pictures hoping you just get one good one. Really take the time to look at and compose something that you feel is visually strong, and just wait for that right moment to happen.
Lauren Deutsch, one of my best students ever. Tell us your website so people can go look at your work.
You can see my work at laurendeutschphoto.com.
Thank you so much for coming on Live from the Heartland. I'm going to put on some jazz right after we do this recording, and I really appreciate. And I'm going to come and see this exhibit on May
Great.
9th or 10th, and I'll see you there.
Okay, thanks so much, Michael.
Okay,
See you there.
everybody, stay tuned. We're going to be back with our next guest. We're going to talk more art and culture with Jacob Fishman and I believe his daughter, and we're going to talk neon. So be right back with more Live from the Heartland. Welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of May 4th. And, one of the things I like to do on this show is to make contact with people I've known over the years and see what they're doing and talk a little bit about what they've done. And maybe that's what old guys do. But way back in the day when we had the Heartland Cafe, I commissioned some neon sign work from this fellow, Jacob Fishman. And he did a really beautiful neon off a kind of a little sketch I did of an arrow with a rising sun, and it was the Heartland General Store. So if you were eating at the Heartland Cafe, you could get directed by this beautiful neon into the general store. And he may have done another one that was called Hot Grits. It was a neon that I had that was used in a dance performance at Mo Ming by Denny Babin, along with music from Al Green. And those of you who know about Al Green, he had hot grits poured on him or thrown at him. Um, that neon ended up being sold. I think it was a remake of it to the husband of somebody who was in that performance. But needless to say, I like neon signs. I've always liked driving around late at night at Chicago back in the day and seeing neon signs for candy stores or bars or whatever. And Jacob's been doing neon for a long time up at Lightwriters Neon Workshop in Northbrook. How about telling us a little bit about your work, how you got into neon, and what you've done, whether it's commercial or artwork. And then we'll talk about a great new project that you and your daughter, Zoelle Nagib, have going on right now.
All right. Well, I first got into it really because of the love of light and color and a little bit of glass. I was a photographer beforehand and just loved the look of them. And one of the first things I did was driving around at night with my camera, photographing neon around Chicago, just because it turned me on so much. And plus, I knew that it wasn't always going to be there. More I looked at it, it sort of put a hook into me, and I wanted to make this stuff. And I had no clue whatsoever, whether you do it under hot water or what you do. So I went out and searched around Chicago and walked in the back door of Flash Trick, was out down on Western Avenue at the time. And I watched the glassblowers working on neon signs, and I just fell in love with it. Went home, tried it with propane torches, failed miserably, and then started to look around for places where I could learn. And it was kind of difficult in Chicago to learn because the neon shops were governed by the electrical union, and they wanted you to be an apprentice, which you had to be in the age group of 18 to 26, and I was 27 at the time. So they told me I was too old to learn the trade. So I searched around.
Mistake.
Yeah, I was living in Evanston at the time, and I finally found a place all the way down in 83rd Street, 83rd and Western, that was willing to teach me something if I was willing to sort of apprentice in the shop and take over in the shop if I learned. And I did, and I spent several years there. And the gentleman that taught me was just a wizard at this. And he retired, and I hung on for about a year, and ended up having a little dispute with the new owners of the shop, and walked and started my own shop. And that's my basic history. Made a lot of neons all over Chicago for major restaurants, all kinds of places, and branched off. And having a background in photography, I did a lot of film props. I think we probably did close to 60 feature film shot in Chicago, and theaters and things like that. And I started teaching too at my studio. Mostly it was small groups, and that was a lot of fun because the excitement of the students really fed into what I was doing. And I enjoyed that. And that's sort of what we're trying to keep up today, because there are very few places where you can learn the art and science of neon sign making or neon art making.
Well, Jacob, before we go to your new project with your daughter, give our listeners and our viewers a little bit about what is the procedure for doing neon. You mentioned glass blowers. How does it work? Give us a little hint.
You have to have a sealed vessel, something to hold the neon in. The neon comes right out of the air. It's a basic element. It's like the light you see in lighting, but you have to make a vessel to keep it in. And it has to be glass. You cannot make plastic neon. It just doesn't work. So half of it is the art of glass blowing, where you take pre-made tubes. Some people even pull their own tubing, which is nice because it gives you, all kinds of custom possibilities in color and texture. But you work this tubing over a fire, different types of fires, different types of appliances, into shapes that you want to have. And then when you're finished, you seal it off with electrodes, and you process it. You pull a vacuum on it, and then you move these inert gases back in. And we use all kinds of things. We can use helium, neon, argon, xenon, krypton, which makes me weak, of course. But that's all part of the process. And it's great when things light, and it's okay when they don't light. Sometimes the glass blowing is enough. There's really a fascination I have in taking this material that's normally hard. You don't just flop it around. You get it to a certain temperature, and it starts moving, and you can get very nebulous with it, just you and the fire and the glass. And it's just really a wonderful experience.
Let me just ask before we go to Zoe, Are there many other neon artists or even commercial neon people around these days?
Well, it's interesting. It's taken a switch. It's kind of fallen out of popularity in the sign shop, in the sign industry, where LEDs have taken over. But an interesting thing has happened, sort of like photography, in that the fine art is still there, and there's a large rise in neon artists, people working with it for art's sake, mostly on the first two coasts. Um, but you're seeing more and more of it in art museums and things like that. So it's good. It's taken the shift from the commercial to the art world, which I love it, because I started basically to make artwork, and the public, I don't know if they were ready. It seemed like there was a basic equation: neon equals signs. So people came and knocked on the door and said, "Hey, make me a sign," and we did.
Well, Zoelle, young people sometimes rebel against their parents, and sometimes they adopt certain things. Most of the time, whether they know it or not, they're learning a lot. How did you get into doing neon? When and how?
Yeah, I also rebelled for a good 30 years. I of course grew up around it, and I started putting glass into fire when I was really young. My parents gave me my own torch when I was 10 years old, and I started bead making. And I did flame working, so lots of solid glass sculpture over a torch, well into my teens. And then when I chose to go to college, I studied photography instead, also kind of following in footsteps, because my dad, his initial interests were in photography, and that's what got him into light art. But I studied photography. I graduated and worked various jobs, had kids. And then right before the pandemic, I started having ideas for artwork in neon, and had those first couple ideas fabricated by my dad, because we were all really busy. And then when COVID came, we were kind of just bored a little bit.
Now what do we do?
Thankfully,
we have to stay home.
Yeah, we were lucky enough to be bored. And I showed up here one day and just said, all right, I'm ready to make my own. I had lots of ideas. And luckily, I had had a good amount of glass experience in my younger years. So jumping back into it wasn't too much of a shock. But, there's a lot to learn. There's a pretty steep learning curve. And I just sort of started and didn't think I was going to really want to get that into it. But the more and more I did it, the more and more I thought, hey, I could do this every day for the next who knows how long. So that's where
you're doing it every day now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm, yeah. It's my only job now.
And for a number of years, Jacob, you had your Lightwriters Neon Workshop, and you worked alone, probably had guests. I remember coming to your studio once upon a time, and I'm going to go looking for those old 35 millimeter photos. So when Zoelle, when you got involved, the space is too small. You only got 800 square feet up there, I think. So what's your plan? You guys are going to open a new studio. You're going to do it together?
Yeah, so we are planning to open a new studio somewhere on the north side of Chicago. It's going to be roughly 2,000 square feet, possibly larger. I think we're going to have room to set up about 6 or 7 benches, so stations for people to work at. And our main focus will be teaching classes. So folks from the public can sign up for a basic Neon 101 class all the way through, master class lessons with a master craftsman. And
your dad?
Yeah, that'll be my dad. And we'll have guest artists. We'll have, one-off little taster courses for people to come in and just give it a try. And we're really excited, alongside, of course, the fabrication and artwork of our own that we're already making, have space to do that. But we're very excited, as my dad said, watching people learn for the first time and find that connection between the material and your sort of power over the material is really fascinating and really fun to watch. So I'm really excited for that.
What are some of the pieces you've created? Are they abstract? Are they do they mirror reality? Talk a little bit about some of the pieces you've created.
Yeah, so I'm pretty split half between word-based art. So art that is very referential to neon signage, has words like you would see in any shop window, but typically with the message turned on its head, either a sort of evolution of a message or the reversal of a message. And then some of my more abstract art has to do a lot with just the glass material itself, with colored glass. I use a lot of hand pulled tubing. Like my dad mentioned, people go into a hot glass studio where they do traditional glass blowing, like making vessels and cups and bowls, and they pull custom color tubing. So I've used quite a bit of that in my work, because the material is just so interesting to me. And having grown up around glass, it's just so beautiful that I can't stop myself.
You ever been cut by the glass? Either of you?
Oh yeah.
Working? Is it an occupational hazard in the neon world?
Yeah, I mean, we get like little cuts on our fingers, and then we sort of realize it's sticky or there's little red prints on things, and we're like, oh. But I've never cut myself badly.
Well, this is a big endeavor. You're going to open a new place. It's going to be much larger than the setup you have up in Northbrook, and so you got to look for a place. You've got to fill it up with all the equipment that you need. This is going to take some dough, and I know you're raising some money, and I'm not sure how much advocating we can do, but I think it's okay to tell us about your Kickstarter and how people can find out more about your project.
Yeah, we have a Kickstarter running right now. It's got about a month left to it. And there's some really great rewards. Different levels of funding will get you stickers or a t-shirt or even a private lesson. So if you just Google Lightwriters Neon Kickstarter or follow the link that we've provided in the show notes, you can find us or follow us on Instagram or join our mailing list, also at lightwriters.com. You can find that. Follow us for updates. But yeah, the Kickstarter is going right now to help push us into that comfortable zone to start setting up.
Let me hit you both up on what inspires you to do various pieces. Do you just laying in bed and you think of an idea? Is it something you see? Is it look when I'm doing, I look at photography books and say, oh, I got a picture that looks kind of like that. I mean, what goes on in your creative process? Jacob, you take it first.
Well, a lot of my work actually comes from songs, listening to music and listening to some of the song lyrics. I'll hear something that sparks an interest. And let me take a step back for a second. I listen to music a lot when I'm going to sleep. So I transition into this dream state and start.
Rolling Stones before bed?
Not really Rolling Stones so much. That's usually the wake-up music.
Yeah.
But I start, getting visuals that go along with it. And I start seeing things, like I heard a song that talked about a black rabbit. And I started imagining a neon made out of black light of a rabbit. And I was also thinking, well, black rabbit, white rabbit, and then I started thinking of, these heredity charts that they would make, black rabbit, white rabbit, and then you get two blacks and two whites, and, how it goes out like that. And I have not made the black rabbit in neon as of yet. It's on the long list of things. I recently made a neon robot, which was kind of fun.
Actually, tell us about the neon robot.
Well, he was just cute. I was just goofing around one day and made a robot. I don't know what even prompted that.
Does the robot move and do things?
No, he stands there. He
looks like a robot.
He holds a little globe in each hand to say that he's got a grip on both worlds. And it was a fun one. It was cute, wiggly mouth and square eyes, and it was very much of like a kid's drawing, almost like kind of what's behind me. I've been accused sometimes of making things that look like kid drawings, and some people say, "Hey, that's great." That's just a certain type of art. Some of the other things I was playing with was the early bird. The idea of the bird pulling the worm out of the ground, and just having a sign that said early birds. Does it mean anything? No, not really. It's my work tends to look like store signs, but they're not. It's sort of a play on that. I had one, I sold it recently. It said musical chairs. Well, it's a game.
That was one of my favorite games at family gatherings.
I know. So I made a sign, as if somebody would be selling musical chairs. But that's
Zoelle. Let me flip over to you. And what is your creative process, or example of one or two?
Yeah, I mean, mine is not quite as lighthearted, unfortunately. Sometimes they're pretty painful subjects. One of the pieces I have actually on display right now at Ken Saunders Gallery down on Carroll Street is an evolution of the quote, "There's nothing new under the sun," which is a biblical quote from Ecclesiastes. And then it was taken by Octavia Butler, who said, "There's nothing new under the sun, but we are in a time of new suns." And or there are new suns. And then Adrienne Marie Brown said, "We are in a time of new suns." And so my neon says "a light under new suns," which is a light meaning either to take off and to land, to find yourself in a new place, or to literally be lit from within, which is what neon is. So that's sort of how I think I take, things I read or things I hear and sort of process the words in a way that makes sense to me, and then come out with my own way of saying it. So,
Zoelle, you mentioned that you've had kids, and I'm wondering if the kids are learning the art of the neon.
Yeah, my oldest is 9, and she's made a couple beads, and she tried bending some neon tubing pretty recently, and she really liked it. So I want to get them back into it. They both also at Halloween, they drew me some really simple skulls, and I made those both in neon and hung them in our front window at our house. So the trick-or-treaters could see some kiddo drawn neon. It was really fun.
Well, let me ask either of you take this one. What would you suggest people do if they're interested in neon, how they learn that? And you could pump up your new project, your new studio, but also maybe the status of neon in the world, or some great neon that has been created that people can learn about. What do you got?
You want to take this?
Well, there is a lot of neon. You see more and more in museums. You go to the Art Institute of Chicago, you may see a neon. There's a show opening this week at the Wrightwood Gallery that's from a 60s neon artist, Chrissa. And it's there are a lot of resources for people that want to research it. I mean, it's all over the internet now. Of course, when I started, there wasn't any internet. So we try to post things whenever we can, Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and all those things. And there's a lot of other people that do that as well.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, if people are interested in learning, of course, signing up for our newsletter and hearing about the classes we teach will be your first route to getting hands-on experience. But there's also some great resources online. One of them is the Neon Makers Guild, and they're a membership-based organization, but have a tremendous resource to experts all over the country and membership all over the world. So that's a really good resource for people to follow. And I'd like to add about the shift from commercial application to artistic application is that not only is most neon you see now in an artistic realm, but more and more people are making their own neon. It's less going to a fabricator and saying, here's my picture, please make this for me so I can put it in a gallery. It's students coming to a neon fabricator and putting their hands to material and working it in their own way. And that's a really important distinction, I think, that we make sometimes when we talk about neon art.
Well, Zoelle Nagib and Jacob Fishman, I want to thank you for coming on, and I'm going to ask you one more time to give the information how if people want to get involved with the Kickstarter program plan with you guys, give it to us now.
Yeah, go to Kickstarter and search Lightwriters Neon Chicago. Those search should work. Yeah.
Light it up, everybody. Shine on. And thank you so much for coming on live from the Heartland.
Thank you, Michael.
I'm going to come see you sooner or later, and I'm going to dig out those photographs. I think the photographs I have of you is when there was a big cactus behind you, a neon cactus.
It's very possible. I remember you took pictures of me and Greg together.
Yeah. Well, I'll send them to you as soon as I figure out what year it was and where the negative is and if it's scanned or not.
Late 70s, early 80s. Thank you.
Right on. Thanks for coming on. And everybody stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I'm so in love with you. Whatever you want to do is all right with me. 'Cause you make me feel so brand new. And I want to spend my life with you. Let me say sing, baby, since we've been together. Ooh, loving you forever.
Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in to Live from the Heartland for this week of May 4th. And we're going to wrap it up now. I'd like just to say that, there's a lot of evil out in the world. There's a lot of bad. There are a lot of problems. And the only way we're going to be able to deal with them is if we confront them directly. And we have to either work a full tilt or a little bit at a time to bring around some transformation in the environment that we all have to live in. It's really up to us. So do what you can to do good in the world. And I know that a lot of you are tuned in or watching or listening to Live from the Heartland are all about making the world a better place. So I want to thank everybody who made the show possible. I want to thank our guests, Lauren Deutsch, Jacob Fishman, and Zoelle Nagib. I want to thank our engineer, Hal James, our board members, producers, Lynn Orman, Katie Hogan, and Tom Clark. And we'll be back next week with some more good radio, good TV, good streaming. Stay tuned here on the left end of your dial or wherever you're getting the show. I'm Michael James saying, do good in the world. The world needs all the good that you do, that I do, that we do together. All power to the people. Over and out. We want to thank you for watching the Live from the Heartland show. New episodes air every Friday beginning at 9 a.m. Central Time. Episodes air each following Thursday on CAN TV, 9 p.m. in Sweet Home Chicago on Channel 21 or streaming everywhere else at cantv.org. Audio episodes go live on WLUW each Saturday, 9 a.m. on the left end of your dial at 88.7 FM or streaming everywhere worldwide at WLUW.org. They're available on Apple and Spotify podcasts by looking up Live from the Heartland on either platform, and are also broadcast on Lumpen Radio each Friday at 9 a.m. on 105.5 FM and streaming at lumpenradio.com. I'm Michael James, and I'm glad to have been your host. Until next time, remember, do good in the world because the world needs all the good that you do, that I do, that we do together. All power to the people. Over and out.
Come to limb. Are you doing the best you can? Tell me, are you doing